Hello friends, my name is Steve Guttenberg and I am the Audiophiliac, and today's show is all about the REL T0 Mark III subwoofer. It's a little sub, it's their smallest sub. It's a 6.5 inch long throw woofer in a tiny box. The biggest dimension is about 9.5 inches. It has a 100-watt Class D amplifier. And it's a sealed box sub. It's not ported. There's no passive radiators. There's no port. It's a true sealed box design. And I like that. There's not that many sealed box subwoofers. But when I come across one, they usually have better pitch definition and deep bass control than ported designs. Just speaking in generalities. But that's what I usually get. But this sub, being just a 6.5 inch driver, what are the expectations here? Well, first of all, this is really for small to mid-sized rooms. If you have a huge space and you really want to feel pounding bass, you're not going to buy a little sub with a 6.5 inch woofer. I think that's obvious, right? So anyway, the other thing that this sub is for, and it particularly well, is for use with small planar magnetic speakers, magnepans or electrostatics, right? Because when I got the magnepan SMGs recently, these are vintage Maggies from 1986. I did a kind of a review of them a couple of months ago here. But anyway, they don't have the deepest bass. The bass is actually pretty adequate, but it is lacking a bit on the bottom. So John Hunter from REL saw that I got these SMGs and he said, yeah, you got to try the T0 Mark III with those SMGs. And you know what? He's right. I mean, John is a straight shooter. If he says it's going to work, there's a good chance it's going to work. So he sent me the sub, I hooked it up, still have the SMG set up, and it was one of those, wow. The synergy between this sub and those little Maggies was perfect. It took like zero effort on my part, speaking of zero effort on my part to make them play nice together. And it just sort of completed the sound of the speaker. That's what you want. You don't want to hear a sub calling attention to itself. You know, I mean, if that's your thing and you want to feel pounding bass all the time, you know, sure, do it. But I want subs that are seen but not heard, or even better, not seen and not heard. But you know what I'm saying? It's like you should feel like all of the bass is coming from the speakers itself. You should be unaware at best where even the crossover is, right? So anyway, I set it up. It was magical how this combination really clicked. But not everybody has Maggies, and certainly not everybody has 36-year-old SMGs. So I also used, over the course of this review, Bowers & Wilkins 607 S2 anniversary speakers, because they're little tiny speakers. They make a fair amount of bass on their own, actually. And also the Klipsch RP600M. Everybody knows them. Many people love them. I certainly do. And those are the three speakers I teamed up with the T0 Mark III. Let me run down some details, some numbers here. The price is currently $449 in the USA, and the normal street price is $499. It comes with a 3-year warranty. It's available in gloss white or gloss black, and the paint finish is impeccable. It's really perfect. And actually, it's 5 coats of paint. It is designed in the USA and made in China. Now, as for setup and connectivity, you can hook it up, let's say, the normal way with an interconnect cable going from your subwoofer output or line output on your preamplifier receiver to the sub, and you can hook it up that way, and it works fine. But the preferred way, the REL way, so to speak, is to use it with speaker level connection, meaning you take a tap off of your receiver or amplifier and run that to this special connection that I'm showing you right now on the backside of the T0 Mark III. It's called a Nutrix connector. And it's super easy to do. Believe me, they've done it gazillions of times. And they think, and I agree, that using, especially with RELs, the speaker level connection actually sounds better than using the signal level connection, the RCA input. But whatever you want to do, it'll work. But I'm just saying, I use it with the speaker level connection, and I had no complaints. And as I said, the setup between, well, the 3 speakers I used, the Maggie SMG, the Klipsch RP600M, and the B&W 607 Mark II Anniversary, super easy. I mean, the blending was just a dream. It really was. This is a tiny, did I mention how tiny this thing is? It's like a 9.5-inch cube, approximately. And it does go down. It goes down to, in my room, about 40 hertz. And that's pretty freaking low. But is it, extraordinarily low for a subwoofer? Of course not. If you get a bigger sub with a 12-inch woofer or a 15-inch woofer, it's going to go down deeper and it's going to be a more powerful sound. No doubt about it. And of course, REL offers much larger subs, right? But what this thing has is the ability to disappear. You know what? I'd even go so far as to say this is the ideal subwoofer for people who don't like subwoofers, who have speakers that are lacking in the extreme bottom end. That's probably the perfect potential customer for a subwoofer like this. I've lived with the MkIII SMG-A, which is very similar to the models that followed, like the MMG and the LRS, the current small speaker from MkIII. They're all, the entry-level model. And as I was listening to all three of them, actually, I never thought, if I only had a subwoofer with this, I would be happy. No, because they all make enough bass that I wasn't lusting after more. That I really felt that way. But when I hooked up this one, the T0 Mark III, and used it with the SMG-A, it really did complete the sound of the speaker. It's like it was supposed to be there all the time. That's what it felt like. And that's what made me just so eager to do this review. To get started in earnest, I played this one, this Tom York record, Atoms for Peace, which I called Amok before. I'm sorry. Anyway, it's a great recording. I love the bass on this recording, whether it's synthesized bass or electric bass, whatever it is going on down there. It's really good, and it's got speed and detail, and can you hear each note blurred together. There's no booming, there's no thickening of it, and that's what the REL T0 Mark III did so well, while seamlessly blending with the SMGs. I was totally in, and like I said, I was shocked how much more I liked the MkIIIs with this sub. I really didn't see that coming. I thought, yeah, it'll add some bass, but in addition to adding bass, and this part I do know, subwoofers, good subwoofers, it's not about just adding more bottom end. I can't explain why, but the sound stage gets deeper and more dimensional when you're using a sub. It just does. So, I don't know. I was totally in. And again, I liked the SMGs before. My love, my affection for these speakers bumped up a couple of notches with the combination of the two. So the next recording was this one, Come Away with ESG. Now, this is an incredible recording. It's from the early 80s. It's an all-girl group from the Bronx. They're teenagers, as I recall, and it's funk. It's just killer funk. A lot of instrumentals, a little bit of vocals here and there, but the recording is a phenomenal recording for this kind of music. And because they're so young, you just feel this vitality, crashing out of the speakers. It's so much fun. And the sound of the electric bass, now I forgot the name of the bass player, I'll stick it in here. But anyway, her sound it's like it's right there. It's one of those where you can easily hear it. It's not smushed together with other instrument. It just pops out of the speakers. And again, I was thinking of it coming out of the speakers, even though I knew in my head that it was some of it, the bottom part of the bass was coming out of the T0 Mark III. So yeah, this is a great record. If you're into funk and you don't know this group, ESG, you got to check it out. Now this is, I think, their first recording, and they made others, and then they broke up, they got back together. But this is a great place to start with ESG. Then I moved the SMGs aside and listened again with the 607 S2s. It's a little tiny speaker, and yeah, adding the sub, it made it sound like a bigger speaker. Now, remember, I'm not high passing the sub. I'm not like using a crossover network to send just the higher frequencies to the speakers, any of these three speakers, right? I'm sending full range signal to all three speakers, the MkIIIs, the B&W, and the Klipsch. they run full range, and I'm setting the crossover so it's just underneath where the speaker is running out of gas. That's the methodology to use a REL subwoofer, well, properly, I guess, right? That's how I set them up, and it works well. Now, of course, for home theater applications where you're going to be putting a lot of energy through the speakers of explosions and special effects and everything, yeah, you usually would use bass management in an AV receiver or processor. I get it. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just using them for 2-channel stereo. So the speakers always got full range signal, and the sub was just dialed in directly under, just sneaking in right underneath the roll-off of the speaker. So anyway, yeah, the 607 absolutely benefited from the sub. But then I moved that aside and popped in the RP600Ms. Now that speaker is bigger than the B&W, and it also really, it just opened up so much more with the sub on the bottom. And as I said earlier, the soundstage just enlarged. There was more depth, there was more space with the sub mated to the RP600M. Now I will quickly point out here that the Klipsch RP600M, being a horn speaker and just a dynamic speaker, is more dynamically alive. It has a more exciting sound than the MkIIIs do. The MkIIIs are kind of, by comparison, a little withdrawn, a little more tapped down compared to the 600M. So using the 600M with the subwoofer and cranking, the black keys, that was a lot of fun. And when I moved back to the SMG, even with the subwoofer, it's not going to make it a party animal. It's just adding bass. So yeah, if you need that, of course, you shouldn't get Magnapans, or certainly 36-year-old Magnapans like this one. They're not ideal for parties, let me put it that way. You're just, cranking the hell out of them or something. They can play loud, well, but in terms of the dynamic feel of the music, a dynamic speaker, and certainly a horn speaker like this one, will absolutely do a better job. Okay, so now we're going to do, so Steve, what do you really think? I think the REL T0 Mark III is an overachiever, a serious overachiever. I mean, in terms of what it does, bass extension down to about 40 hertz, that's pretty impressive. Pitch definition and musicality, that's are its real strengths. Because of course, for its price, $449, you can buy a bigger sub. You definitely can. An 8-inch sub, a 10-inch sub, maybe even a 12-inch sub, it's not so bad, right? You can, and those subs will deliver more power, more oomph, more, thumping chest, making your pants flap in the breeze from the bass. Yeah, you can do that for $449. No doubt about it. But if you want a sub that's musical, that is great for music, and your room is small to mid-size, yeah, this could be the right one, because what it does is it's working on a different level than the others. Those are more about power delivery, and this is more about playing music, playing the tunes. And the fact that you can hook it up to an amp or a receiver that doesn't have a subwoofer output and hook it up to its speaker level connections, yeah, that's the bonus point. And the fact that it's so freaking tiny and beautifully finished, you could just tuck it away anywhere. Yeah, it's got a lot going for it. So it is highly, highly recommended. And now it's time for the Audiophiliac viewer system of the day. MkIII sent this one in. It's mostly vintage. There's a Thorens TD166 turntable with an Ortophon 2M black cartridge. The electronics are all by Kenwood. The integrated amp is a KA9100. The tuner is a KT7500. And the tape deck is a KX830. It's all from the 1970s. Phono Stage is a little more recent than that. It's an EAR, that's Esoteric Audio Research 834P, designed by the late, great Tim DeParavicini. So this is interesting. MkIII says he went through 5 sets of speakers before settling on these Boston Acoustics A400s. The previous ones were from B&W, Kef, Teal, and Bang & Olufsen. He loves the Boston's soundstage depth, and just scale. He's been collecting records for more than 15 years. He so far has amassed 3,500 LPs. Nice going. We are back. My name is Steve Guttenberg, and I am the Audiophiliac. Well, we got business here, right? A lot of people still don't know that I've started a podcast. It has a catchy name. It's called the Audiophiliac Podcast. You can hear it on my website. If you're not into the whole podcast app thing, you could just hear it over my website, which is called, well, it's called the Audiophiliac Podcast. But anyway, I will link to it here. Of course, you can also hear the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google and iHeartRadio and all those places that you hear podcasts. So I've now made 10 episodes. There's a lot there to check out, and they're not the same thing as what I've done on the YouTube channel. They're original material. Then I could tell you about my Patreon. My Patreon is where you can go if you want to help support this channel. Coming up on 5 years later this summer, and I am amazed that I've made it this far. And in large part to my patrons' support. So I urge you, if I made you a little bit interested, to check out my Patreon. And it's at patreon.com/audiophiliac, and there is a link to that below. What else? Well, I could ask you to subscribe to this channel. You'll be here now, right? Please subscribe. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, please hit the like button. And with that, I can now say my work here is at last complete. Thank you so much for watching. And I really do hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Bye-bye.